Noel Casler, Donald Trump has spawned a mutant generation of Republicans, including the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world. I keep saying like he didn't start racism or whatever, but has he just enabled people to be as awful as, Malcolm Nance's book is not just about Trump, but the Trump insurgency, which includes all of this up to and including January 6th. But I look at my dad. My dad would not recognize a party that includes a Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't even know what I'm asking.
No, I know exactly what you're asking.
Awfulness that Donald Trump.
My grandfather was Nixon's envoy to Vietnam. He was a lifelong conservative who would not recognize where we're at now. And I think the lasting legacy of Trump is that he's given us Marjorie Taylor Greenes and Lauren Boeberts and Matt Gaetz's. And that's the real danger, is because Trump was almost a Trojan horse. He was sloppy, but he allowed all these other sort of really bad actors to metastasize. And that quote right there that Marjorie Taylor Greene said, it makes my blood boil. I'm the child of a lesbian mother. I'm 51 years old. I grew up in the 70s where we'd have to, we'd go out to San Francisco, in the late 70s and stuff. And gay men and women raised me. And they're wonderful, beautiful, strong people that back then had to live in sort of fear of their truth in a lot of ways. And I lived through the AIDS pandemic, and the scourge. And that kind of language reminds me of the early days of that.
Me
where
too.
It's like, oh, it's just
I just said that Friday. Like my high school boyfriend died of AIDS, and I'm just like my hackles go up that I'm like, are the right people getting it? Like it's just that reflex we have from the 80s.
So and if you've lived through that, it scars you. Because I lost uncles and people I loved, to that disease because we couldn't get a government to take it seriously. And to have people say that with a platform as large as she has, I mean, it's beyond the pale, and it's so dangerous, and it's an affront to progressiveness, to progress, to love itself.
Yeah,
right?
But
you're attacking.
The fact that this one orange criminal could just, some days we were reading his tweet right about Biden getting rebound COVID. Right. You still some days go, I cannot believe this orange reality show clown was ever president. I mean, it's just, and this is what he spun. But you're like, but meanwhile, Roe v. Wade is gone because of him. We have a whole universe of these Marjorie Taylor Greenes. I mean, you said Dr. Oz has to be one of the creepiest dudes we've seen in the avalanche of absurdity that dark money and foreign ops have gifted U.S. politics in recent years. I mean, it's him, J.D. Vance, these Trump celebrity candidates, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Doug Mastriano, a guy's running for governor of Pennsylvania on an anti-Semitic platform. Like it's beyond imagining. Ron DeSantis, who's Trump with self-discipline, who will be incredibly, much more dangerous than Trump ever was if that guy, God forbid, ever gets into office at the executive level, nationally. It's beyond dangerous. And the problem is Trump made the formula easy, right? Get out there, spread hate, wave a flag, say you're pro-guns, say you're a Christian nationalist or whatever, and these people will follow you without looking into the fact that you're getting wealthy on it. Right? Marjorie Taylor Greene is making money off of this stuff. Lauren Boebert is making money. Dr. Oz is already a billionaire. His wife owns Esplenda. Like he's rich off his TV contracts. He's doing it on behalf of foreign governments, in my opinion, and that's something that you couldn't imagine in this country 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. What I guess becomes the next question of the hour is if you don't think he's going to go to prison, is he going to run again? Is he going to win again?
I don't think he'll run and win again. I don't think he really wants to go to D.C. again. He wants to stay out of jail. And he's obviously losing some of his support from Fox News. Lachlan Murdoch and these guys are sort of switching to DeSantis, which should alarm everybody. I think in the 11th hour, Trump will cut some sort of deal to keep his sort of toehold on the MAGA, like pick one of my kids as your running mate and I'll endorse you, or give me a cut of the fundraising, or promise me a pardon, or something like that. I think he'll probably do an 11th hour deal and throw his support to a DeSantis or a stronger candidate. That's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. The thing Democrats need to do is they need to show up and vote in November, right? Because you can't afford to have 10 more Marjorie Taylor Greenes in Congress, because you won't have anything happen in the next 2 years. And whoever that Republican candidate is will get elected just on the misinformation on Hunter Biden alone, right?
Also, if Trump, I don't know what to say either, but if Trump gets in place, all of these people that will just throw the election to him no matter what, I think that increases the chances that he'll run in 24 if he's not in prison. I mean,
that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. If he gets all these governors and secretary of states and a Kerry Lake or somebody who's already pledging fealty to him, then of course he'll run. And then you'll just have a king. Right? If he gets in again, he's just going to anoint Ivanka or something.
Right. And I thought Jan Brewer was bat crazy, but now we have Kerry Lake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Everything's like the new Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're like, wow. Crazier than Sarah Palin. Yes. Right. Actually, could I have the tiniest of violins? Sure. You are correct. This is in the New York Times. Donald Trump's insistence on repeating his debunked claims of election fraud has harmed his relationship with the Murdoch family, according to the New York Times. The network, Fox, is effectively displacing him from his favorite spot, the center of the news cycle. Trump is reportedly angry with Sean Hannity in particular.
Yeah. He is, and noticeably absent from the golf tournament was Sean Hannity, right? Tucker Carlson showed up and got a little FaceTime. MTG did, but Hannity wasn't there. And if you remember, Hannity was the guy taking his insane phone calls at 9 o'clock every time a scandal broke.
Well, the most damning text from Hannity was no more stolen election talk. Like, basically saying this is bull. Stop it, But it says Mr. Trump has complained recently to aides. Oh, I guess I need the violin still.
All right.
To aides that even Sean Hannity, his friend of 20 years, doesn't seem to be paying him much attention anymore. Trump lashed out at Fox and Friends in a transmission, Truth Social. He said, that show's been terrible. It's gone to the dark side. That's so sad when the big bag of rats fights amongst themselves. Except that this is everything you need to know in the age of Trump. I think in that piece it was reported, well, unless he gets indicted, then they'll start covering him on Fox. Like, it's just whatever. Yeah. Right. If he runs again or gets indicted, they'll give him more coverage.
Yeah, and that's the scary part, is that he's profitable, right? There's no such thing as bad press. He knows that more than anybody else. The only thing that'll be interesting is that if we have to watch him melt down, right? Because he needs the constant attention. He needs the Hannity and the praise that he was getting on Fox News. So it will be interesting to see what happens now that they've somewhat turned that spigot off. I'd love to be a fly on the wall when they talk about DeSantis. Down in Mar-a-Lago and stuff. Because, DeSantis is almost punking him, right? He's grabbing the mannerisms. He's getting sort of sloppy. He's wearing the ill-fitting suits. And Trump is probably sitting there like, that's mine, like a comedian, like when someone steals your bit. You know what I mean?
You're like, long red tie is mine.
Right, I own that.
Well, speaking of the whole party, the cancer spreading the whole party, the DOJ's investigation into January 6th insurrection appears to be adding a major focus. A top Republican National Committee official, who is this guy now, Joshua Finley.
New character.
Are there enough prisons to hold all these people? Currently, the RNC's director of, wait for it, election integrity. He is appearing in subpoenas being issued by the DOJ. At least 3 witnesses in the DOJ's investigation of so-called alternate electors in the 2020 election, 2 in Arizona, another in Georgia, have received subpoenas demanding communications to and from Josh Finley. I mean, no, at the end of the day, we're going to find this infected not just the Republican Party in terms of the fake elector scheme, all the way up, as we're learning, through the Secret Service, Homeland Security Department. I mean, do you think we're going to be able to peel back all these layers, that as you were complimenting the J6 committee?
Yes, I do. I think that's an area where it plays to the DOJ strengths. I have to take them on face value that Merrick Garland is doing all he can, and it's a wide-ranging investigation. I wish he had sort of been more accountable to the public early on and assured us, because, justice is, the symbol is these 2 scales, right? And the scales were out of balance, and a woman with a sword. We needed some sword action and some balancing of the scales. But something so vast, if they're on the trail, is going to take people down. Because can you imagine a crime sort of bigger than making a fake ballot? And people forget, Trump had an operation going in the White House where he had people calling. He had people cold calling, right? He had telemarketers calling up state senators saying, hey, we know that, you have to vote for Biden, but we're here to tell you, you don't have to do that. You can change your votes, and we're sending a representative to your state to explain it to you.
The wife of a sitting Supreme Court justice making those calls, right?
Absolutely. And who was overseeing in the White House was Jared Kushner, right? Because Kushner was the director of that campaign. Nothing went down without Kushner's knowledge. He insisted that everybody had to answer to him, and he's so slick that he made sure he was out of the country, in the days leading up to January 6th, and then famously flew in that afternoon and took a shower. Because it was Pilates morning or something. I don't know. But
to get the Saudi blood money off them. Right. Yeah.
Right.
The stench.
But I mentioned that because if they're doing that kind of outreach, then reach all the way up into the White House, into who signed off on this. We know Mark Meadows would have known about it, but whoever signed off on that kind of malfeasance and criminality needs to be held accountable forever, not riding off into the sunset with $2 billion in their hedge fund.
Like usual, the Trumps are so dumb. Like Don Jr. and Eric, right? They say it out loud. They said all the Trump Russia stuff out loud, but but didn't Don Jr. say that? Like, we control all the levers of power.
Yeah.
Before the election, like they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the avenues are ours, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but what he was referring to was the military too.
Yeah.
He was saying we control the military.
Yeah.
They can't do anything because we have all the guns, essentially, is what he was saying. And saying it out in the open, it's unbelievable. It's one of those things you step back every day and you're like, wait, did this really happen? Like, are we really still talking about this? And it was so obvious in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this next one, headline for FBI failures before the Capitol siege have avoided the January 6th committee's scorn, but not for long. It's expected to put more focus on the intelligence and law enforcement failures at the FBI and Department of Homeland Security that left them so unprepared for the mob. But again, we're going to find it went all the way to the top that this was he ordered the code red. How many times do we have to play he ordered the code red? He told them to stand down. These are white Trump supporters, right? I mean, this wasn't an accident. They were unprepared.
Absolutely. And the fact that the Secret Service was involved, for some reason, that just always gets to me because it shows the level of corruption, that he sort of instilled in these agencies. And DHS, right? You have Mike Flynn's brother who was over there. They wouldn't allow the National Guard to come in. They had already told the Capitol Hill police, don't do anything to these guys. Don't be too rough on these guys because they're Trump supporters. In advance of that, we all know if that was Black Lives Matter activists hiking up on the Capitol Hill, it would have been different. And I told Adam, I don't think we saw each other last week at an Adam Schiff benefit, but I used to work on Capitol Hill. Most people don't know this, but in 1989, I was the in-house bike messenger for the Congressional Budget Office. And I did it for 3 years. I was like this deadhead hippie kid, but I used to pick up House documents and ride them to lobbyists and lawyers downtown. And I would sit on Capitol Hill every day. And it was a different world back then. Yeah. It was a different era. And to see how deeply he's corrupted it and sort of, just made foul all these things that were institutional in our American psyche, that has to be corrected. That has to be, that has to be made right because it's just so wrong. It's not something we can move on from as the GOP wants us to do, right?
Yeah.
Hey, just move on. The Americans don't care about January 6th. Yeah, they do,
Yeah. Yeah.
Ow.